Greetings and welcome to Abstract Essay, where ideas take shape, thoughts find depth, and every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest, one of our advocacy, humanizing healthcare and restoring trust in the age of AI, social media, and Dr. Google, none other than Miss Amy Loden Tiffany. Welcome. Welcome, Miss Amy on Abstract Essay. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
Hi, and thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here. I'm Amy Loden Tiffany. I'm a medical doctor by background and entrepreneur, business owner, and I work with women all over our community to help them both postpartum and peripartum, but really with all women and all humans to identify what's gone wrong in medicine and what do we need to do to fix it and how can we connect with people better.
How we will fix it? This is a big question, Miss Amy. And today let's talk about humanizing healthcare, how to build trust between doctors and patients. So tell us, let's start with the core issue. Beyond the obvious need for medical competence, what is the fundamental ingredient of trust that is most often missing in the doctor patient relationship today?
So, when I put on my physician hat, we're trained a certain way. We're trained to think a certain way, to consider diseases and symptoms a certain way. But when I put on my patient hat, what I find is that many times those systems and those ideologies are too rigid and often lead to doctors not believing their patients and patients not then trusting their doctors. So, what I think if we can get away from the idea that maybe perhaps the patient actually knows their body better than we do. We may know more about how it functions or not, but come together as a collaboration rather than a competition. We're going to see both patients and physicians have better relationships, and that's going to result in better outcomes.
Better outcome for sure. The modern healthcare system often reduces patient visits to 15-minute transaction. How can we possibly build a meaningful trust within such severe time constraints?
It's a perfect question, and it's why I left the system as it exists to create my own business. Our appointments are 30 to even 60 minutes long. There is a trade-off. You can have more time or you can have more insurance reimbursement, and you can have payment through different ways than insurance. And I chose the latter. I chose to say no thank you to many of the insurance constrictions and restraints and to work outside the confinements of that. Other people are doing different models, so I certainly would not insist that my way is best. It is what worked best for me, but there's many ways that you can go outside of that traditional system and be heard. And at the root of all of us, we want to know that people are listening, that they hear us, and that they believe us.
I like that. Believe you for sure. They believe you, and for sure they have trust for you. From patient's perspective, what is the single most damaging behavior a children can exhibit that instantly erodes trust?
You know what I see when I'm wearing my patient hat, and I've been a patient myself. I've taken my children and as patients, and my husband has been quite sick, and I've been a patient advocate for him. And I don't think it's only the lack of time, but the first thing that goes away when you introduce the digital healthcare era is that there's no more eye contact. There's no more physical touch. There's no more hand on the shoulder or empathetic nod. There's no more silence and grief together as humans because what you're doing on the other end of that computer is typing as fast as you can because you've got to rush off to your next thing. So if I'm wearing my patient hat and I'm seeing another physician do that, I know right away that they're not connecting with me, that I may matter to them in terms of how much insurance revenue they'll get from that encounter, but they're not seeing me as a human, as a person. So when I put on my physician hat, I'm trying to give back to my patients what I know to be missing. And many, many doctors are doing this. And while our focus is on physicians, I don't want to any way take away from what other healthcare experts are doing. But in my view, I'm trying right now just to work with physicians on building better trust.
Building trust. For sure. On the flip side, what is a surprisingly simple, nonverbal cue from a doctor or nurse that can immediately make a patient feel seen and safe?
Mhm. When you make eye contact, when you can articulate back to the patient what they said without making them feel like you're just repeating verbiage, but you're actually getting the concept, when you can reword it in your own words and say what they said, make sure that you're on the same wavelength of expression, it immediately builds trust. It immediately makes that patient feel seen and valued and heard. And sometimes that's what we need as patients. That's all we need is for someone to listen and to give us the space to talk. On the flip side, I've seen many times where because of the expectations to see 20, 30, 40 patients a day, the patient never even gets an eye contact upon the physician coming in the room. And I think at their core, physicians would say that's not who we want to be, but we don't know another way. And so my offer is let's find a different way. Let's teach each other a better way. Let's learn from our patients. Let's be our patients and move forward together.
Miss Amy, tell us. The word bedside manner feels outdated. What does truly effective trust building communication look and sound like in a modern clinical setting?
So I think it sounds like meeting the patient where they are rather than having unrealistic expectations. So, for example, if I have someone who comes to me and they want to lose weight, if I just tell them you need to eat less and move more, I'm not offering them anything different than anyone else on the marketplace, and certainly not what they can find on Dr. Google or ChatGPT. But if I ask them, how does it look in your life? If we want to change anything in your activity level, what would need to happen first? They are the expert in their life. So they can tell me, well, I can do A, B, and C if I just had someone to watch my kid, if I just had someone to help me with this, if I just had whatever. And when we can identify the barriers that are stopping them from doing what they already know they need to do, we can make much more progress than if we try to do it the traditional and systemic way.
Miss Amy, how can a healthcare professional effectively balance the need for technical or clinical efficiency with the human need for empathy and connection?
So, within the traditional confines of medicine, I don't think they can. I don't think you can humanize medicine in a 10-minute encounter. So I think we need to step away from this idea that that is what normal should look like and redefine normal. And from there, we can then back out what do we need to have or not have? What adds value? And the interesting thing about value is that it's defined by the person receiving it. So if the patient isn't finding value in the traditional system, then they have every right, and I would argue every responsibility or duty to look outside the system. This is very idealistic, however, in a world that's trapped by government and private insurance companies. When you eliminate the third parties, you can have more of a transparent process. That's not where, at least in the United States, where our system is at. And there's a lot of fraught discussions and tensions because of this. And we're not getting to the root problem, which is that the current system is depending on volume rather than value as defined by the patient, not the payer.
Miss Amy, when a patient is facing a scary diagnosis, how does a provider move beyond medical facts to address the profound fear and uncertainty without offering false hope?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's not one that I know that anyone knows perfectly, but it does help when you have already built rapport and trust with the patient. So, what doesn't work is to come in and say, I'm your new doctor. Your CT scan shows that you have metastatic cancer. That's a terrible introduction, right? We all
Hmm.
know that. But you can come in even as a interaction that's new and say, "I'm sorry we're meeting under these conditions, and I really want to understand what you hope to gain from this conversation so that I can help you get it. And while I may not be here helping you long term, let me at least get you pointed in the next right best step." And when you come at it from an attitude of humility and that you are going to help them go wherever that next best step is, you're going to have a lot more progress when it comes to difficult conversations. On the flip side, if you've known a patient for years, there's a certain amount of grieving you have to acknowledge, even in yourself. If I've known a patient for years and they've just retired and now they are being diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, I know from our history that they have years of dreams that are now dying. It's not just their physical health. I know they have years of relationships that they have put off investing in because they thought they had more time. So, those difficult conversations have to be had, but they need to be had in the context of how long you've known the person, because that continuity or lack thereof actually helps guide the discussion itself. And in both situations, it can't be rushed. It has to be honest and it has to be respectful of where that person is.
Miss Amy, in an age where patients arrive with internet printouts and conflicting information, how can a doctor become a trusted guide rather than defensive authority?
Yes. So, what I don't know that I have the full answer to that, but I'll tell you what I've done. When people tell me they looked on the internet, they almost always are like, "Sorry, I shouldn't have done that. I know I shouldn't have done that, but I did it anyway." Or I shouldn't have asked ChatGPT, but I did it anyway. And for whether it's good or bad, it's irrelevant because it's already happened. So rather than fighting with them about it, I just am straight with them like, "Great, what did you find? What did you hear about? What is scaring you? And then let's look at this from a clinical perspective." And I have found that unequivocally across the board, I don't get pushback when I come at it from that perspective. I have also, before I started doing this style, I've been on the other side where I've told them that's not what the science shows, that's not what the literature shows. And it really turns patients off because immediately you're becoming combative with them. So I find it much more effective to say, huh, that's interesting. Let's learn more together rather than trying to elevate myself into the role of expert, because again, they're an expert in themselves and they are advocating for themselves by even going and looking. It doesn't mean that their information's wrong either. Sometimes it's exactly right. So learning to say, great job, you've done some research. I think that probably some of the things you found are accurate is very affirming. While at the same time, then you can say, these other things I have some questions or some concerns about. Are you open to me giving you my opinion? And just that difference in how you talk to people, it's much more respectful, it's less authoritarian, it's less paternalistic, and it's more progressive to having meaningful conversations and building trust that can continue beyond that one encounter.
Miss Amy, what does active listening actually look like in a busy practice? How can a clinician demonstrate they are truly heard what a patient is saying, even if they can't solve the underlying problem immediately?
Yeah, sometimes that's going to look like just being very direct and saying, I hear you saying this. Is that right? Other times, it might look like seeing a theme that's woven between the symptoms. Some people are very articulate and other people are not. And often they'll tell me, I don't really know how to describe this. This is just kind of all these compilation of symptoms, and they get overwhelmed. And so you have to meet them where they're at, even in a busy practice. And you have to hear what they're saying and what they're not saying so that you can start to respond to them and say, this is what I think you're expressing. Is that correct? So, my recommendation is always checking back in with the patient as the source of truth, always going back to what they're saying until you get it right. And you're not going to get it right every time. So, being willing to accept correction until both of you are aligned with what's going on.
The patient's role and shared responsibility, Miss Amy. Trust is a two-way street. What can what can and should patient do to help foster a more trusting and collaborative relationship with their healthcare team?
I think one of the easy pitfalls when I'm wearing my patient hat is to assume things that aren't true. And that could look like my doctor didn't respond to me for several days, therefore they don't care. Or I got labs and I never heard from that doctor, therefore they are normal. And so I think as a patient, one of the important things to do is to be very clear on what to expect. So you've met with a physician and part of the visit itself should be talking about what is the next step or what can they expect from the physician. And if you're not hearing that, then it is entirely appropriate to say, my homework is to go get these labs and then I will hear from you in what time frame. And if you've already done the labs and you haven't heard back, it's to say, it's been a week. I haven't heard back. Does that mean my labs are normal? And then making the effort to ask, because I'll tell you, as good as healthcare is, as good as technology is, it is every single week where we don't get some type of lab result or imaging study result from wherever it was done. Doesn't matter how good everything else went. If I don't see that result, it hasn't been reviewed and the patient doesn't know about it. And so they might think it's normal and it might show something horrible. But if I haven't seen it and they're assuming it's normal, they're going to get hurt. And so in our practice, what we tell patients is we want you to be your own advocate. If you haven't heard from us, that's not normal. And give us a week on imaging studies unless we've told you otherwise. But if you haven't heard, you need to let us know. And it's my opinion that a good practice is going to have that regardless of the structure of the practice. And it is entirely appropriate to ask the physician, what should I expect next? How will we know that progress is made? What does success look like? And a good physician can tell you that.
Miss Amy, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Yeah, so short term, I am very focused on my top three values, which are my faith, my family, and my fitness in that order. Long term, I have a book in my head, another book I want to get out. I've written The Postpartum Pivot already, which is on Amazon, but I'd like to really lean into the next phase where I think women get forgotten between OB care and primary care, which is the perimenopausal years. So that's more of a long term thing.
Well, good luck to your goals, Miss Amy, and looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
So, if people want to be like me on the medical side, then I would say listen to your patients. Um, it was William Osler, I believe, who said your patients will tell you what's wrong with them. If I'm incorrect, somebody teach me. But I think as a patient, if you took nothing away from this except to know that you're not crazy, what you're saying is real, and keep looking until you find somebody who will listen, that would be my biggest piece of advice.
And thank you for that advice, Miss Amy. Let's talk about the future and the path forward. We're seeing the rise of medicine or herbal medicine and direct primary care. Is the solution to humanizing healthcare to make it a premium exclusive service, or it can be scaled for everyone?
So, two different things there. The herbal medicine, I think, is integrated probably in all different practices. DPC practices, direct primary care, are a little bit different model. And there are a growing number of them who just say you pay a flat cash fee per month and you have unlimited visits. You can get your prescriptions there many times, and they just don't deal with insurance at all. That's opposed to a concierge's model, which you pay a membership fee to be part of the practice, and they may or may not bill insurance. And there's other models as well. I don't think it's scalable to only do individual practices because there's not enough physicians. So you have to then look at how do you scale businesses as systems, which is effectively how we got healthcare systems. The problem is not necessarily whether we're individual or systemic, it's how do we structure the most important part of it, which is the human connection between the patient and physician.
How is the role of the nurse, physician, assistant, or medical assistant critical in building the overall trust a patient has in healthcare organization?
Yeah, it's essential to have a team that's fluid. If any person from the medical assistant to the janitor to the secretary to the physician to the nurse practitioner, it doesn't matter who, if and the patient, if any one of them feels like they are more important than the other, then you've already lost the opportunity to build the best team. The best team includes all of the people around the patient, with the patient, and for the patient. And that cannot happen if there's egos involved. So in our practice, we work with health coaches, medical assistants, we have administrative staff, physician assistants, nurse practitioners, excuse me. But all of them come together with the same unified goal as myself, which is let's get this patient feeling better. Let's help them holistically. We want not just physical, but mental, emotional, spiritual. Where can we meet them and where can we help and serve them the most? So it's very important, I think, to come at it from the perspective that everyone has a role, everyone is equally valuable, and everyone needs to shine at the top of their training so that everyone else can shine at the top of those trainings. If I'm trying to do every single thing, I'm not doing a good job only in my highest skill set. I'm trying to water it down or dilute it. Similarly, people get in trouble who try to do too much and have more. They try to do more than that what is within their training, and they get in trouble. So both extremes can be harmful, and that's why I think the team coming together with the patient is so important, that it's a unit and we all are collaborating to find the best opportunity for that person.
Miss Amy, for a medical student or the new clinician just starting out, what is the single most important piece of advice you would give them for building a practice founded on genuine trust?
So medical students have a long road ahead of them because they still have to do their residencies and perhaps their fellowships. Um, I think one of the things I wish I had known in that time of my life was all the options that were possible. And at least in the United States, it's a very clear track of medical school, residency, maybe fellowship, and then academics is often, or corporate medicine is often the outcome. But there's also a whole section that's independent medicine, and some 40% of individuals are in that realm across specialties. So if there's that many people doing it, it is clearly a possible outcome. And I wish I had known earlier that that was something that I would be interested in. The other thing I wish I had known more is just the business side of medicine and understanding how much of medicine is a business and an enterprise. And once you understand that, it begins to make more sense. It's not a game, because certainly we don't want to have losers in healthcare, right? But it is a
Yes.
game in the sense that you learn how to do it better, and you learn how you can manipulate the role you have best to its maximal capacity and opportunity for impact in that patient's life. So, understanding business and leveraging the different parts of the system to help patients is crucial. And I don't sense that I didn't feel that I had it in my medical school. When I was teaching at an academic medical center, I didn't see it there. I've worked in corporate medicine, I didn't see it. I just don't think that's something that most people know until they come out on the other side and they're like, oh, I can do this. I don't need a big system to make an impact on someone's life. And if you drill down to the heart of why most people go in medicine, it's not the money, it's that they want to impact people's lives.
Miss Amy, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 1-1 review in fifth season too, comedy 1-1 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 1-1 in fourth season, and my baby podcast law 101 and Mental Health 101 Love Letters in third season, and Movie 101 Review Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its second season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Emmy, looking forward, what gives you the most hope that we can reclaim the human connection at the heart of healing?
The most hope I have is from the patients themselves. because patients really want to trust. And I think that physicians can meet them there. I think there's a lot of opportunity, and the patients themselves will demand the system to be changed into what they need. So I am excited and hopeful for the future to see what changes and where things go and how they can be blessed.
Miss Amy Loden Tiffany, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Hoping for more and more empowering advocacy as well as books to come. And I'm inviting you to be my guest on Book 101 Review, and let's talk about your book. So,
Sounds
can you
wonderful.
please invite our listeners to support your book, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yes. So we wrote the postpartum pivot. It's on Amazon, and it's designed to help women who've had a baby find their new best self.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Amy Loden Tiffany because if you support her, for sure, more and more empowering books to come, more and more empowering advocacy to come. So, Miss Amy, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
More to come, people. See you soon.